I was at the hospital taking care of my husband after he'd broken his legs. While he was sleeping, the head nurse secretly slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand. Stop coming. Check last night's security camera. 3 a.m. Mercy General Hospital in the heart of Chicago was unnervingly quiet. The whole white building was like a giant beast, fast asleep. Only the faint green lights in the hallway and the cold flickering glow of the exit sign cast a chilling light on the walls. The smell of antiseptic bandages and old bed linens mingled with the long-term scent of sickness. It was the smell of a hospital, a scent that, if you breathed it in for too long, made your head heavy and your lungs tight. I sat hunched on a folding chair next to the hospital bed. My back half propped against the wall, half suspended in midair. My spine ached as if someone were twisting it by hand, a dull ache that made me tremble. But I didn't dare move too much. The slightest creak from the chair would make the man on the bed frown and groan. That man was my husband, Michael. He lay perfectly still, both legs encased in thick white casts and suspended in a traction frame, a tangled mess of ropes and pulleys. He looked like a specimen fate had put on display. Michael let out a soft moan, his voice broken. Beads of sweat dotted his forehead, and his eyebrows were knitted together in a single dark line. I shot up instantly, my own legs so numb they felt like they didn't belong to me. I poured a glass of warm water, stuck a straw in it, and held it to his lips, whispering, "Mike, drink some water. It'll help with the dryness. Just sip slowly." He struggled to open his eyes. The same eyes that once melted my heart with their kindness were now bloodshot, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and weakness. "Emily, this is too hard on you," he rasped. "I was so careless on the road, and now you have to take time off work to care for me. I feel so useless." I managed a faint smile, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't be silly. We're husband and wife. The stronger one helps the weaker one. You're laid up now, so I'll take care of you. If it were me, you'd do the same. This is our life, not someone else's. There's nothing to be ashamed of." I used a tissue to wipe a few drops of water from the corner of his mouth, but my heart felt a deep, sharp pang. 3 days ago, Michael had a car accident on his way home. The Chicago police report concluded it was due to brake failure. His car had slammed into a median. He was lucky to be alive. But the doctor, after looking at the x-rays, had sighed and told me, severe fractures with nerve compression. "You need to prepare yourselves. There's a chance he might be in a wheelchair for a long time." For a man whose career was just starting to stabilize, those words were a death sentence. And for me, Emily, a 30-year-old forensic accountant, it felt as if someone had just demolished the house I had spent nearly 10 years building, brick by brick. Our careers, our home, our plans to have children, all the dreams we had sketched out together were put on an indefinite pause in a single night. For 3 days, I had barely slept. During the day, I sat in that chair by his bed, monitoring his 4-drip and medication while juggling emails and reports from my firm on my laptop. At night, I would wake up every 2 hours to help him shift his position, give him a sponge bath, and change his bedpan, making sure the cast stayed dry. Every nerve in my body was stretched as tight as a violin string, ready to snap at the slightest touch. "Where's Chloe?" Michael asked after a few sips, his eyes scanning the room. He tried to sound casual, but his gaze swept quickly around before landing on the empty chair on the other side of the bed. "She went home to make you some bone broth. She said she'll bring it tomorrow to help you get your strength back." I had to practically force her to go home and get some sleep, I replied while adjusting the flow of his 4. Chloe was Michael's younger cousin. She had just graduated from college and moved to the city from a small town to find work, staying with us until she could find her own place. She was sweet-talking and quick on her feet. For the past 3 days, she had been a lifesaver, running errands, handling paperwork, and buying meals. Without her help, I probably would have collapsed. Thinking about it, I felt genuinely grateful. Don't let her work too hard. And you need to get some rest, too. You look paler than the patient, Michael sighed, closing his eyes, his voice tinged with pity. I was about to tease him to lighten the mood when the door creaked open. The soft sound of wheels rolling on the tile floor followed. The woman who entered was the head nurse, Sarah. She was in her 40s, not beautiful, with a face that was always impassive, the kind of person who had seen so much life and death that nothing surprised her anymore. She spoke little and worked efficiently, normally keeping a professional distance from patients' families. But for some reason, these past few days, she would always give me an extra glance as she passed by. It wasn't a look of annoyance, but more like she was thinking something over and then deciding against it. Bed 7. Time for your medication, Sarah said, pushing her cart toward Michael's bed, her voice low so as not to disturb the other patient in the room. I quickly stood up and moved aside. Thank you, Sarah. You work so hard. She didn't reply. She put on her gloves and gently lifted the blanket to check his casts and the urinary catheter. Her movements were skilled, but her eyes were as sharp as a scalpel, darting from Michael's face down to his legs before settling on the 4 bag. Ma'am, could you go to the nurse's station and grab 2 more bags of saline for me? This one is almost empty and I'm out of singles on my cart. She turned to me unexpectedly, her tone leaving no room for argument. I was a little taken aback. Tasks like this were usually handled by nursing assistants, but her serious expression kept me from asking questions. I nodded and turned to walk out the door. Just as I passed her, I felt something small and cool pressed into my hand. A small folded piece of paper was slipped into my palm with incredible speed. The sharp cold sensation startled me like being pricked by a needle. I almost cried out, but when I looked up, Sarah had her back to me, pretending to adjust Michael's pillow. With her other hand hidden behind her back, she made a swift gesture, bringing her index finger to her lips in a clear signal for silence. My heart seized. The instincts of someone who spends her days working with numbers and spotting irregularities told me immediately that something was wrong. I didn't turn back or stop. My hand clenched around the piece of paper as I walked straight out into the hallway. The corridor was deserted. The only sound the low hum of the air conditioner. I walked straight to the corner that led to the small kitchenette. A blind spot the nurses jokingly called the camera-free zone. The light there was a dim yellow, just bright enough to see a person's face. I pressed my back against the wall, taking a deep breath to steady my trembling hands. The paper was crumpled and damp with my sweat. I slowly unfolded it, my mind still hoping it was just a prescription note or some minor instruction, but the scribbled words that appeared under the dim light sent a chill down my spine. Stop coming. Check last night's security camera. He's faking sleep. Just those few words written in a hurried scrawl with smeared ink. But to me, it felt like someone had just dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. My scalp tingled and my palms went cold. The words faking sleep danced before my eyes. Stop coming. Who was faking sleep? Michael, check last night's camera. What happened last night? Imagine being in that situation. Your husband, the man you love, has been in an accident and might be disabled, and you've dropped everything to care for him. Then, in the middle of the night, a woman as famously stoic as Sarah secretly hands you a note like that. Anyone who says they wouldn't be terrified must be made of stone. My head spun. The past 3 days flashed before my eyes like a fast-forwarded tape. Michael was always complaining of pain, especially whenever I got close to his casted legs. He wouldn't let me look at the injuries, saying, "It's gruesome, Emily. Don't look." His phone, which he never used to lock, was now tucked tightly under his pillow every night. The moment a text came in, he would quickly silence it. And Chloe, it seemed that every time she entered the room, he would moan more, appearing weaker. But when it was just the 2 of us, I sometimes felt he was in less pain, though he would try to hide it by closing his eyes and holding his breath. I had dismissed those details before, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But now, under the dim yellow light, with those words on that piece of paper, all those scattered grains of sand were suddenly strung together into a long, tight chain, squeezing the air from my throat. I stood frozen in the kitchenette for a few more minutes until the pain of my nails digging into my palms brought me back to reality. Don't panic. I wasn't just a wife. I was a forensic accountant. For years, my training had taught me one thing. When you find an anomaly, you find the evidence. You don't jump to conclusions. With that thought, I tore the note into tiny pieces, dropped them into the toilet, and flushed until nothing was left. Then I bent down and splashed cold water on my face. Looking up into the mirror, I saw a woman with a pale face and eyes sunken from lack of sleep. But something in her gaze had changed. The familiar softness was replaced by a very thin, cold glint. "Get it together, Emily," I whispered to myself, my voice crying, screaming, fighting. "None of that will solve anything right now. You need the truth." I turned on the faucet, grabbed 2 bags of saline from the shelf as I was told, and walked back to the room. As I entered, I forced my expression to remain calm. "Sarah, I've got the saline." Sarah looked up at me. In her eyes, I saw 2 things clearly, pity and determination. She took the bags, hung a new one, and checked the 4-line one last time. Then she said, as if talking to herself, "He should be stable tonight. You should try to get some rest. We'll call you if anything happens." I nodded my thanks, but didn't sit down right away. I stood there for a long time, watching Michael. He was lying still again, eyes closed, breathing evenly. To an outsider, he was just a pitiful husband suffering from broken legs with his devoted, exhausted wife standing by his side. But in my mind, after that note, Michael's face had become strangely unfamiliar, like a masterfully painted mask. "Tonight, I'll let you sleep. Tomorrow, we'll see what's real," I thought silently, not sure if I was talking to him or to myself. That night, for the first time in 3 days, I didn't stay awake by his bedside, counting his every groan. I lay down on the folding chair, pulled the blanket up, and stared at the ceiling with my eyes wide open. A single thought repeated over and over in my head. Tomorrow, I have to see that hospital footage no matter what. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the window, I got up to draw the blinds and adjust Michael's blanket. My body felt weak, as if I had just recovered from a long fever. But my mind was strangely alert. The moment I opened my eyes, Sarah's words on the note reappeared, as clear as day. "Stop coming. Check last night's security camera. He's faking sleep." Michael was still lying quietly, his eyes closed and lips dry, occasionally wincing as if in pain. Chloe brought in a container of soup and set it on the small table. Seeing me awake, she chirped. "Emily, you're up. I just made some bone broth for Mike to help him get his strength back. You must not have slept well last night. Look at those dark circles." I glanced quickly at Michael. His eyes were still closed, but his shoulders trembled slightly, as if he were trying to suppress a groan. To an outsider, it looked like a family united in overcoming a tragedy. If this had been yesterday, I would have smiled and thanked Chloe. My heart warmed by my considerate sister-in-law. But this morning, everything I saw was distorted, like looking into a cracked mirror where every reflection shattered into sharp, jagged pieces. I smoothed my hair back, keeping my voice even. "Thanks, Chloe. I have to stop by the office for a bit. They need me to sign some urgent documents. Can you stay here and keep an eye on Mike for me? Call me if anything happens." Hearing this, Michael slowly opened his eyes and looked at me with concern. "Emily, will you be long? I feel anxious being here alone. You've been taking care of everything these past few days, leaving me with a kid." "What are you talking about? Chloe has been a huge help to us. We haven't even thanked her properly yet." I turned and smiled at Chloe, then patted Michael's hand reassuringly. "I'll only be a few hours. Just take it easy. If you need anything, call a nurse." After I spoke, I bent down to adjust the traction ropes and the bandages on his back. My movements were as careful as always, but inside there was a cold, empty void. Before, every time I touched Michael, I would think, this is my husband, the man I chose to spend my life with. But now, a different question kept swirling in my head. Is he really acting? I quickly gathered my coat, handbag, and laptop. Chloe took the bag from me, not forgetting to add, "Drive safe, Emily. Come back for lunch. We can have takeout. Don't eat out too much. All that greasy food is bad for you." I nodded and looked back at Michael one last time. He grabbed my hand, his eyes bloodshot, the perfect picture of a man terrified of being abandoned. "Emily, I'm so sorry. What if I end up disabled? If it gets too hard for you, please don't leave me. Don't divorce me, okay? You're the only reason I'm still alive. If this were yesterday, I probably would have cried. I would have rushed to assure him, I will never leave you. But now, all I felt was a lump in my throat. I gently pulled my hand away and forced a smile. What are you thinking? I'm just stepping out for a bit. I'll be back. Lie still and don't move too much or it will hurt more. Chloe is here and the nurses are here. No one is abandoning you. I turned and walked out of the room. The door clicked shut behind me, a soft sound, but to my ears it was the sound of a life splitting in two. Instead of heading for the main exit, I went down to the parking garage. It was a vast, dimly lit space that smelled of gasoline and damp concrete. I found a secluded spot, parked close to the wall, rolled up the windows, and locked the doors. Only in that sealed space did I allow myself to exhale a long, slow breath. I took out my phone and found the contact for Kevin, a guy who was a few years behind me in college and now worked in cybersecurity for a software company. I sent him a text. Kevin, I need your help with something personal. It's urgent and has to be completely confidential. I'll pay you well. The scene receipt appeared almost instantly. Typical for a guy who lived glued to a screen. What's up, Emily? Just tell me what you need. A round of drinks is on you next time. I bit my lip and typed. I need to see the internal security footage from Mercy General Hospital Orthopedic Ward, room 307 from around 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. last night. Is there any way you can get access? As soon as I sent the message, my heart started pounding. I knew I was doing something that wasn't exactly by the book, but I also knew that if I didn't, I might spend the rest of my life living in a terrifying state of uncertainty. A moment later, Kevin called me directly. Emily, this is a big one. It's a public hospital, and their system isn't a joke, but it's not impossible. Give me the exact hospital name, location, and a picture of the room door. I'll see if I can track the internal IP, but Emily, I have to ask. Are you sure you want to see this? Some things once you see them, you can't unsee. I paused for a moment. Kevin's voice made me feel like a client hiring a private investigator, but there was no turning back. I said softly. I'd rather be hurt once than live with this doubt for the rest of my life. I'll send you the picture now. Please try to get it for me this morning. Afternoon will be too late. Okay. Stay near the hospital somewhere with a decent Wi-Fi signal. I'll let you know how it goes. If I get a link, I'll send it so you can stream it directly. Don't download anything. It could be traced. I hung up, my hand trembling slightly as I opened my camera roll and found the picture of the orthopedic ward room 307 sign I had sneakily taken on my way down to the garage. After sending it, I turned my laptop on, tethered it to my phone's hotspot, and sat curled up in the driver's seat, listening to the hum of the car's AC. Time crawled by. Every minute felt like an hour. While I waited, my mind automatically started replaying old memories. I remembered when we first started dating. Michael was so hardwork. He would ride his motorcycle all the way from Evanston to Wicker Park just to bring me a container of homemade soup because he heard I was stuck working late on a construction site. Back then, I believed there were still plenty of sincere men in the world. After we got married, he started a small construction supply company. He used to boast to his friends, my wife is a forensic accountant. She's tough. If I do anything crooked, she'll sniff it out immediately. He would laugh, ruffle my hair, and say, don't worry. You handle the finances. I'm just out here trying to make a name for us. Those words felt so warm back then. In recent years, his business had become less stable, and less money was coming in. I noticed he was more irritable, often coming home late, smelling of beer and a strange kind of cigarette smoke. But every time I asked, he'd say, a man has to network. It's tough to land projects these days. Don't make it harder for me. I was so busy, sometimes too exhausted to even breathe. So, I let it go. Partly because I trusted him, and partly because I thought a marriage couldn't survive if a wife was always suspicious. It wasn't until today, sitting in this hospital parking garage, clutching my laptop like a life raft, that I realized all this time I had been busy auditing blueprints and cost estimates, but I had forgotten to audit the man sleeping right next to me. An hour passed, then another. My eyes started to sting and my neck grew stiff from sitting in one position for so long. Just when I thought Kevin had given up, my phone buzzed repeatedly. A message popped up. Emily, I'm sending you a link. It will only be active for 30 minutes. Then it will expire. When you watch, turn off all external sound and use headphones. Whatever you see, stay calm. Don't do anything rash. I'm serious. I took a deep breath, plugged my headphones into the laptop, opened a browser, and clicked the link. The screen showed a black window, which a few seconds later resolved into an image. It was a top-down view from a ceiling-mounted camera, black and white, but clear enough. The angle covered most of the room, Michael's bed, the folding chair I always sat in, the door, the small table. The timestamp in the corner read room 3007, 1:58 a.m. I dragged the timeline to around 2 a.m. The time I remembered finally giving in to Michael's pleas to go home, shower, and come back early in the morning. The image was clear. A woman with her hair in a high ponytail, wearing a light jacket, it was me, was bustling around, tidying things up, then leaning down to say something to Michael before opening the door and leaving. The door closed on the room and the video fell silent. Michael lay motionless like a dead fish. I clenched my fists, my fingers trembling slightly on the trackpad. A tiny sliver of hope remained. Maybe Sarah had misunderstood. Maybe he just moved a little. Not enough to be called faking sleep. But less than a minute later, the thing I dreaded most appeared, stark and undeniable. Michael's eyes snapped open. They were quick, alert, with none of the groggy, pained look he always had around me. He lifted his head, scanned the room, and then propped himself up on his elbows. The movement was sharp and steady, nothing like that of a man with severe fractures who was supposed to be immobilized. I could clearly see his legs still in their casts, lifting up and down, rotating side to side. He even stretched to grab the phone he always hid under his pillow, tapping on it with a look of such casual ease it was hard to believe. A soft thud echoed in the car. It was the sound of the pen dropping from my hand onto the floor. I bit my lips so hard I could taste blood, but I didn't tear my eyes away from the screen. A few minutes later, the door in the video opened and Chloe walked in carrying a large bag, probably food. The camera didn't capture smells, but I could almost imagine the scent of fried chicken and warm beer wafting through the screen. As soon as she walked in, Chloe grinned. "Brought you the good stuff. Is Emily gone?" Michael, no longer moaning, chuckled, his voice clear. "Yeah, she just left. God, I was starving. It's been 3 days of soup and half bowls of whatever bland stuff Emily brought. Hand it over." He snatched the bag and inside was a box of fried chicken and a few cans of beer. His hands moved nimbly, tearing off a piece of chicken and biting into it with gusto, a stark contrast to the man who claimed he could barely swallow when I was there. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed, leaning in to pat his leg through the cast, giggling. "Eat slowly, you'll choke. I was so worried about you, but you have to keep playing the part of the suffering patient. If Emily gets suspicious, the whole thing is ruined." Michael, still chewing, patted her back and then gave her a light slap on the behind, seemingly oblivious to the camera. "You're a great actress, Chloe. Without you helping me, she'd never have bought it. Looks like she's softening up. A few more days and she'll agree to sell the Lincoln Park brownstone. Once that's sold, we pay off the debts and we'll still have over $1 million left. Plenty to start over somewhere else." The words Lincoln Park brownstone exploded in my head. It was the 3-story house my parents had left me. The deed was in my name. When we got married, I had agreed to let Michael live there, but I had always considered it my inheritance, my final safety net if life ever got rough. But in my husband's plan, it was just a life raft for him, a piece of bait to keep his demons at bay. Chloe couldn't hide her excitement. "Are you sure Emily will sell? She seems gentle, but she can be stubborn. That's why she's easy to fool." Michael scoffed, twisting the cap off a beer and taking a long swig. "I had my doctor friend talk to her. Scare her with all the worst-case scenarios. Then I'll act all hopeless. Tell her I'm afraid of being a burden. Emily will always choose to sacrifice. She has a big heart for everyone but herself. You just wait." Once the house is sold, I'll give you half. We can go to Miami or San Diego, open a bar or something. We can live well. No need to stay here and look at her face all day. I saw Chloe lean her head on his shoulder, her voice dropping. What about the loan sharks? I heard you owe them a lot. Yeah, well, a debt is a debt. Once we have the money, we can pay it off. He shrugged. I owe them about 200 grand. The interest is piling up, but that house will solve everything. Don't you worry. The important thing is that Emily has to sign the papers. Chloe was quiet for a few seconds, then asked hesitantly. So, when will you divorce her? I saw Michael frown, slightly annoyed at the question, but he quickly forced a reassuring smile. After everything is settled. If I divorce her now, she'll get suspicious and it'll ruin everything. Don't worry, it's over between us. I mean, what woman could stand a disabled, debt-ridden husband? She'll leave me eventually. Then I'll be the one who was abandoned, the victim. I'll have the money, and I'll have you. Smart, right? I couldn't listen anymore. My headphones were still on, but my lips were salty from biting them. I pulled the headphones off, and the sound of my own breathing filled the silent car like it belonged to someone else. Outside in the parking garage, a few people in white coats walked by silently, their soft-soled shoes making almost no sound. No one knew that inside a small car right under the hospital, a wife had just witnessed her husband's entire betrayal. I didn't cry. My eyes were strangely dry, as if my tears were too scared of this truth to show themselves. The first thing I felt wasn't grief, but humiliation. Humiliated for being so underestimated. Humiliated for priding myself on being sharp, on being able to account for every dollar in a multi-million-dollar project, only to let the man I shared my bed with turn me into such an easy mark. I thought of the Lincoln Park brownstone. Of the afternoons my dad would sit on the front steps in his old t-shirt, sipping iced tea, watching me come home from school, his eyes always smiling. I thought of my mom, how every Thanksgiving she'd make a huge pot roast, telling me to always cherish the house. If anything ever happens to us, she'd say, this house is your anchor. It's your roots. Those roots, in Michael's eyes, were just collateral for loan sharks. I suddenly burst out laughing. A dry, hollow sound that echoed in the car like a stranger's voice. Anyone passing by would have thought I was having a breakdown, but that laugh was like flipping a switch. In an instant, my mind shifted from panic to ice-cold clarity. I opened my phone and texted Kevin. Save that clip for me. From the moment I left the room until Chloe came in and they talked. Get as much of their conversation as you can. I'll save a copy myself. Thank you. I owe you big time for this. Kevin replied immediately. I've already downloaded it, trimmed it, and I'm sending it to you through a secure channel. Keep it safe. Don't let anyone touch it. Do you need me to call someone? Just hearing that made my blood boil. I stared at the words, my lips pressed into a thin line. No, I'm okay. This is my mess. I'll handle it. Please don't tell anyone. Act like this never happened. After sending the text, I sat up straight and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. It reflected a woman with disheveled hair and sunken eyes, but her gaze was no longer trembling. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity. From this second on, the gentle, patient Emily of the past was dead. What was left was Emily, the accountant, the woman of numbers, of balance sheets, of cold, hard audits. The only difference was that this time the project I needed to audit wasn't a building, but a marriage. I sat in the car for a long time after turning off the video. Not because I was still scared, but because I was methodically organizing everything in my head. The images I had just seen no longer terrified me. They were just data, clear, irrefutable evidence. And when things became data, I knew how to handle them.